So the AP poll has dropped, and I didn't have a ton of bones to pick last week, but I got a couple this week. I just don't, you know what? Never mind. We'll just go into it. Memphis is number 25, Utah's 24, USC 23, Houston 22. None of those were ranked last week. Now, I don't have a problem with teams that weren't ranked jumping up into this thing. I do question how USC went from unranked to ranked, despite the fact that they didn't play. I understand the principle. The principle is if teams ahead of you drop and everyone just bumps up a rung or two. But here's the question. Why would Iowa not jump into this thing? Why would Washington not jump into this thing? You know, teams that played yesterday and dominated yesterday. Did you see what Iowa did to Minnesota with the Floyd on the line? Floyd of Rosedale on the line? A splattering with the Floyd of Rosedale on the line. And that's not good enough to rank Iowa. You know why? They didn't watch. The voters didn't watch the game. How are they going to rank you if they didn't watch the game? And Washington. Washington so far this year had the unenviable task of playing Ohio State. So that's a loss on their resume. And then they've played Michigan, and that's a loss on their resume. I see both of those teams firmly entrenched here in the rankings. They really handled Illinois yesterday. They're not ranked either. And I would pay a lot of money to know how many Washington games outside the Ohio State game or Iowa games, period, that the AP voters have watched. Because they have no business being unranked. And yet they are. And Southern Cal's just sitting there. And for that matter, Houston's sitting there. Now, Houston had a great win yesterday against Arizona State, but they lost to Texas Tech pretty handedly at home. Their strength of schedule, I think, is inferior to both Washington and Iowa. So anyway, I think both those teams should be ranked. Michigan's at 21, by the way. Texas at 20. Texas is at 20. So maybe that's all there is to say about that. I think sometimes you get credit for two things. The first, you've got the Longhorn logo. The second is you're a two-loss SEC team. So you're just going to get a lot of benefit of doubt. I would have no problem if Texas was unranked. I would have no problem with that. So if anyone wants to yell some of these SEC teams are overrated, in most cases, I don't agree with that. You could yell it about Texas, and I wouldn't fight you on it. I'm okay with that. Missouri's 19. They're down 4 spots. Quarterback is out probably for the year, but you're not supposed to project here. So I think they're properly rated or ranked right now, but with the understanding that there's further. I mean, they're about to play A&M in 2 weeks. They're probably not winning that game. So there's further that Missouri can fall. So I don't know that they'll be in this much longer. Oklahoma, same thing. Oklahoma's 18th. I don't think they're propped up because they've played tough schedules, especially Oklahoma. However, they're probably not done losing either. So I think those are two that are ranked right now, and I agree with it. But if I'm projecting, I don't know that either of them will finish ranked. Cincinnati's at 17 and having a really solid year. Louisville is at 16. They're up 3 spots, having a really solid year. All right, Virginia's at 15. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting because this is where we're so far in the schedule now that it's not that you've played 3 or 4 teams. You've played 6 or 7 teams in some cases. And so we're starting to get a really solid resume, and we're starting to really ask the question, who have they played? And there's this debate that forms. All right, how much should you be rewarded for just pure record? How much should you be rewarded for strength of record versus strength of schedule? What's the difference between the two? Our buddies at College Football Nerds put out a really good thread the other day that I happen to agree with about how strength of record sometimes is a very overused and misunderstood metric. And strength of schedule is also sometimes misunderstood, but I think it's more understood. So they're at 15 right now. Tennessee's at 14. Let me ask you a question. I'm going to finish here. Texas Tech's at 13. Notre Dame 12, Brigham Young 11. So let's talk about Tennessee and Notre Dame here. Because I kind of have the same question about both of them. All right, what are we rewarding? What are we really voting on here? We could be voting on potential, which you're not supposed to be voting on. Or we could be voting on how many games you've won. Or we could be voting on how strong the teams were that beat you. So Notre Dame, as we know, has lost to Texas A&M close, and they lost to Miami close. Those are two top 10 teams. Tennessee lost to the number 4 team and the number 5 team. And that's full stop there. So if those are your only losses and you've won every other game, I fully get, what your resume is and how it warrants you being number 12 or number 14. My question is, what are your best wins? Like at what point do we stop crediting you solely for losing close to really good teams and start asking, okay, but also, have you beaten anybody worthwhile? And Tennessee just flat out hasn't. Tennessee's beaten Syracuse, Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Kentucky. But they're getting credit for playing Bama kind of close, that's a 17-point game, and playing Georgia really close. Tennessee may be a little overrated here, to be honest with you. They should be ranked. I'm not saying they shouldn't be ranked. That's where you lose people. If you're doing the whole anti-SEC thing, and you say, look at Tennessee. Yeah, I'm looking at them. What? They shouldn't even be ranked. No, buddy. No, they've got better resumes than like number 22. If you're saying they shouldn't be 14th, they should be 19th, that's where I'll listen to you. You got to have some nuance to your argument. You can't just cut your chest open with a machete and you rail against the SEC nonsensically. Hey, wait just a second. Appreciate you guys watching. Most of you are subscribed. If you're not, please do so. It's free. It helps us keep the show free, and that's how we do college football year round. All right, back to the video. But I would listen to you if you said Tennessee was a little overrated here. Notre Dame at 12, same thing. Now, they've got the USC win. So USC's ranked right now, according to the AP. At the very least, they're a top 30 team. That's better than any win Tennessee has. So I get it a little bit more with Notre Dame. Frankly, I think they're still projecting a little bit with both of them. Brigham Young and Miami are tied for 10th. We don't even have a function in our graphic to create a tie. Because why would we have a tie? But we do. So they're tied for 10th. Vandy's 9th and Georgia Tech is 8th right now. It's getting a little later in the season. We've had years in the past where you look in the early part of the season and, oh, how cute. How cute. It's still September, but Vandy's ranked. Let's pat Georgia Tech on the head. They're ranked. The next time they play football games, it'll be November. It's not early anymore. And there's this thing in my mind that I keep picturing. It involves both of these teams. Let's just say they keep winning. Each one of them can afford to drop a game, really. But let's say they keep winning. Do you realize what it would be like during rivalry weekend, where over the past few years, Texas A&M was big last year, Ohio State, Michigan's big, Iron Bowl's been kind of hit or miss. Can you imagine if Vandy, Tennessee has playoff implications? Furthermore, follow me here. Georgia and Georgia Tech play that Friday. And sadly, Georgia Tech moved the game to Mercedes-Benz Stadium for a paycheck. I get it, but I don't like it. But both of those games could have huge implications. Not to mention you could have A&M and Texas that day, and you're still going to have Ohio State, Michigan. Whew. Yeah, so lots to look forward to. Ole Miss is 7. Yep. Oregon 6. Yep. And then 5-1. I don't even think they changed. Georgia, Bama, A&M, Indiana, Ohio State. So there's a gap in the Big Ten right now, and there's not in the SEC. The Big Ten has the number 1, 2, and 6 teams, and then there's a gap, and the next closest one is number 21 and 23. So there's a big gap forming there, which is going to be good for the Big Ten because it really clears up the picture. Now, they may only get 3 teams in the playoff, for all I know, but they're going to be 3 really, really bona fide national championship contending teams, whereas in the SEC, it's still a little early to know this because we haven't seen what form teams are going to be in come December. It may be the SEC has no team that's as good as Ohio State. Or they may have like 3 teams that can compete with them. I don't know. That's what God created November and December for. But look at the state of the SEC. They got 5 of the top 9. It's quicker for me to just say that. They got 5 of the top 9, and they got 14, 18, 19, and 20 as well. So I know what a lot of people say to that. And I think you're wrong. A lot of people say, oh, of course a lot of their teams are ranked. Well, they're ranked so that they can prop up themselves by talking about how many ranked wins they have. That only fits if you can point to me the SEC teams that don't deserve to be ranked. Don't tell me they're overrated, because whether Tennessee's 14 or 18, they'd still be ranked. So that would still be a ranked win for Alabama. I want you to tell me which teams shouldn't be ranked. And so, like, if it's Missouri, for example, you got to give me, since they're 19, you got to give me 6 resumes that are in a blind comparison better than theirs. And I don't think you can. Like, I don't think you can do that with Vandy at number 9 or Bama at number 4. You can say they're overrated. I just told you now Texas is one of them where I think you can make the argument Texas shouldn't be ranked. Okay, that's one. What about the rest? And don't be bending the logic to fit your argument. You got to use the same criteria when you're comparing all of them. The SEC they've got that many teams ranked right now, and they should have that many teams ranked right now. The trade-off to that is you could cannibalize yourself. The other trade-off to that is the SEC may have 0 elite teams. They may have 0 A-list teams. The Big Ten could have 3 for all I know. So a couple of things can be true. The Big Ten, again, I'm using very soft language here because we don't know. The Big Ten may have the 2 best teams in the country. The Big Ten may have the 3 best teams in the country. The SEC may have the 4th, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, and 13th best teams in the country. So it could be overall a deeper conference, but without the tallest trees like the Big Ten has. I'm very interested to see how that plays out. Because again, I don't want to back myself into a corner because it's not November yet.